I am joining from Lashano Lonelyland up in Berkeley, California, in the Bay Area. Should I also do my description?
You might be able to do that now. Yeah.
Sure, great. And I'm joining from a house. I'm a white presenting woman with blonde hair, and there's art on the walls, and I'm wearing a blue shirt.
Thank you, everyone. I see people in chat from Honolulu, also from LA, from Costa Rica, from New York, Canada, from Nevada, from Sydney, Australia. Whoa, what time is it for you? I think you're in the middle of the night, so thank you very much for joining us. Um, Hello from Thailand. I think you're also very late. Thank you for joining us.
From
Yeah,
India. Wow, this is
see
beautiful.
lots of old friends, new friends. Really excited. I'm only like halfway through scrolling down all of the messages. Hello from Slovakia. Hello from South Africa. Lots of folks from LA, Burbank. Thanks for joining us. Next time you can come into the IDA office if it's convenient for you, and you can be among people in real life. We have water, coffee, so on and so forth. Hey. All right, Anissa, shall we get started? Okay,
Yes,
I'll pass it back to you.
thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's IDA Insight Festival Strategy Workshop. We are so glad to have you all here with us for this important and informative webinar. I'm just gonna pause for a second. Armando, I think I'm echoing, so if you don't mind like lowering the volume just a tiny bit in the office, I think that might be the issue. Just so sorry. Okay, great. That much better. Thank you. My name is Anissa Hossein-Nejad, and I have the great privilege of being the IDA membership and individual giving program manager. To visually describe myself, I am an Iranian woman. I have short black hair, and I'm wearing a big glasses and wearing a blue button-up shirt and two silver earrings. Um, Before we dive in, I would like to thank our access providers, Andrea Lust and Bob Laporo, who will provide American Sign Language interpretation for this session, and our cart captioner, Eric Olson. We are truly grateful to all of you and for all the access that you're helping us provide in today's session. I would like to also thank the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs, whose support make this workshop possible. Thank you all so much. Before we dive in, I want to introduce IDA Insight. IDA Insight is our quarterly educational series designed to explore the intricacies of documentary filmmaking. Through IDA Insight events, we bring together industry leaders and experts who provide you with the valuable insight to help you with your journey in the documentary field. I also want to thank our IDA members who also make our work possible. Many of you are in the office with us, many of you are joining us online, so thank you all for being part of our community. Now, I have a lot of thank yous, so please bear with me. I also would want to thank Abby Sun and Marielle Olentine, who have generously offered their time and expertise with us, and my colleague Armando Zamudio. If you're in the office, you see Armando. Armando is helping us host the session today. Thank you, Armando. Yeah, a few housekeeping notes. Card captioning is available, which you can activate through the Zoom toolbar. Please note that the presentation part of the IDA Insight is being recorded, um, but the workshop portion at the end will not be recorded. I also want to know that today's session again is a hybrid session, so we have folks joining us in the office and we have folks joining us online. Now to today's schedule. The workshop will be divided in three parts. We will begin with the 45-minute presentation and conversation between Marielle and Abby, where Abby will discuss the key strategies of setting up your film's festivals timeline and strategy, followed by a 10-minute Q&A. We will then take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and we will workshop two IDA members workshop for 20 minutes each. This portion of the workshop, the workshopping part, will not be recorded. And we ask that the information you receive in the workshop portion of the today remain confidential. We are really grateful to everyone who submitted their projects for the workshop. We obviously are not able to review everyone's project, but we're truly grateful to members who agreed to participate in this portion of the workshop. I think, yeah, so that's all of the housekeeping. Now to the Q&A portion. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will collect all of your questions, and then later on during the Q&A session, we will get to them. You will receive a little note from me in the chat that says, "Hey, I have collected your questions." So don't worry, I am collecting them. It might just be a few lines underneath, so keep your eyes out for that. Also, we have a lot of incredible folks joining us today. So if you see a question in the chat, you have insight to share, feel free to engage. This is a space for all of us to learn together. So we really encourage all of you to engage in the chat and answer each other's questions. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Abby-san formally. Sorry, not that she needs any formal introduction. Everyone knows Abby. But Abby is IDA's Director of Artist Programs and Editor of Documentary Magazine, whom I have the great privilege of working with. Abby was a 2024 Schornstein Documentary Film Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School, where she researched media policy for independent documentary filmmakers. With that, I leave it to Abby. Thank you so much.
First of all, I just want to say it's amazing to see so many people here in the office. Amazing to see so many of you online. I'm an Asian American woman with my black hair in a ponytail, and I'm wearing a collared shirt, and I'm sitting, depending on which window you're looking at, I'm either in an office full of people or I'm in front of a blank whiteboard. I just want to also say that this program today is being supported by the LA City Department of Cultural Affairs. So we do have some government support for this program. And this is another reason why government support of the arts is so important in our times. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen and then we'll jump right into the presentation and I will introduce our guest speaker today, Marielle. Okay, so for those in the room, it will be up on screen there. And if you're sitting by me, you can also look over my shoulder and see my speaker notes. Okay. So I'm the Director of Artist Programs at IDA. So here I am the Conference Director of Getting Real, our program biannual conference by and for documentary filmmakers, and I edit our print magazine, Documentary Magazine. But before I joined IDA in 2022, I was a film festival programmer, and I was also an independent consultant, and I made my money because film festival programming does not pay a livable salary for most people who do that work. I made extra income by being a festival strategist and consultant for filmmakers, documentary filmmakers. In the years before joining IDA, I also did artist development. I had, with my colleague Keisha Knight, who's IDA's head of funds, a program for Asian American filmmakers, and I'm also still a film critic. So my professional background is actually film festivals before working at IDA, so that's where the genesis of a lot of this information in this presentation comes from. But to give you more of the filmmaker view today, I've asked Marielle Olentine, who is a rock star producer, co-executive director of Tick and Olin Production, full service production company, and they also make really beautiful, creative, artistic documentaries. One of them is Youssef Srouji's Three Promises, which was finished in 2023, premiered at Vision de Real in Nyon, Switzerland, one of the top documentary festivals for creative documentaries, went to dozens of film festivals all around the world. They have exciting distribution news as of this year, and Marielle and her collaborators did this all without a sales agent on the festival circuit. So, and she participated in this workshop 2 years ago with this project, Three Promises. So for all of those reasons, and for this kind of what we might consider an untraditional path towards success, and also for her really generous nature, total understanding, and how we like to think about things horizontally, we've asked Marielle to join us. Marielle, is there anything you would like to say at the beginning?
Just that it's really so wonderful and cool to be able to come back and share what I've learned after learning so much in this workshop, I think 2 years ago, 2023. So really, really grateful to be here and excited to talk about these projects and share any of the learnings that might be helpful.
So our agenda for today, we are going to spend 45 minutes on this presentation. There will be a first Q&A on any burning questions that you have from that presentation. We'll take a brief break, and then we'll go into the workshop portions. And then after workshopping both of those projects, we will have a second Q&A. We do feel, so we've done this workshop, I think this is now the fourth one that Anissa and I have done this very, very similar workshop, either the presentation plus the workshop or just the workshop portion. And we feel pretty confident that this theater in the round style of workshopping, though we may not be working on your project, that it is extremely helpful for you to see examples of how other people, because it's really the thought process that we're trying to convey. It's not necessarily the exact details, because for everyone here, none of your projects will also be the same. They will also change over time. So it's not about teaching you, for your current project, how will you do it, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but it's about thinking about how you kind of place yourself in a way that makes sense in this field.
Question. If we're in the room, should we be on Zoom too for chats and stuff? Or no?
I mean, if you want to see the chat, then Armando, we can pull the chat up. If you would like. I would say that in my experience, chat can sometimes be distracting. We do have, I will say, 250 people online. So that's why we don't have chat up. But I am the conduit. And you in the room, you'll have a chance to ask questions too. Okay. All right, so we're beginning now. So the biggest takeaway for all of us here is that, one, I'm assuming that it's mostly filmmakers. I'm assuming that it's mostly filmmakers, but if you are a sales agent or a festival programmer, please let us know in chat. It would be very helpful to know your perspective on all of these things. But you, as filmmakers, will be the only real stewards of your film throughout the film's entire lifespan. This really crystallizes the point of this workshop, which is that this seminar is about building power for filmmakers. It's not about giving your film over to somebody else who you think will save your film, because that doesn't happen. Okay, so there are numbers in case you're wondering how far this goes. But for me, the very start is by setting priorities. And this is really the most difficult part of this process for me in terms of thinking about building power for yourself. This presentation will be shared with everyone, and even the text will be posted online. So don't worry about writing down all of the info. But feel free to take screenshots. It's actually already on IDA's YouTube as well. Okay, so what I mean by setting priorities is that we all imagine that our film does amazingly and that you can do all of the things above. But in many cases, some of these things are ancillary. If you have the best festival run, if because of the festival run, you have hundreds of thousands, you get lots of press attention, then maybe that will make the film more interesting for, buyers, and then they will buy it, and then you will get more travel and in-person, so it's true that many of these priorities kind of follow from each other. But the way to approach a festival strategy, and we'll explain why later, you really do have to start by choosing a main priority, because that determines what you spend your time doing, because you have limited time in the day, you have a limited team. If you have endless money and endless resources to spend on your film project, I'm not sure you need to be in this presentation. So I am assuming that you have limited time and limited resources. So this really means that we need to choose a priority. And going briefly through them, so this is pretty common if you talk to other festival consultants or distribution consultants. We all have very similar categories. The way I think about it is that there are kind of 6 different priorities, and they do kind of conflict with each other. So they may not seem like they do. So for example, you might want to just show your film to the most amount of people possible, maximizing audience numbers, butts and seats. The best way to do that, honestly, is not by going to film festivals, but by touring, or by going to specific film festivals that have the biggest auditoriums, the biggest seats. For example, at Sundance, documentary films are not played in the biggest theater, in the Eccles Theater that has 2,000 seats. Documentary film premieres, especially if you're a world documentary, they premiere at the Egyptian on Main Street in Park City, which is about 200 seats. That's a pretty small theater in comparison. This is what I mean by it doesn't actually naturally flow. If your goal really is maximizing audience numbers, then there are certain festivals where it might seem like you'll get thousands of people to attend. That won't actually happen. For documentaries, you might want to prioritize subject issue impact works, community screening, partnerships with advocacy organizations, maybe screening for policy or lawmakers. Those people aren't necessarily going to big premiere film festivals. They're not going to film festivals like Cannes, for example. You might want to recruit financial investments via sales. We'll talk about this more later on, but selling a film at a film festival is very, very difficult and has been very, very difficult for many years now. But as kind of individual operators, it's very possible to still make money off of screening fees and off of the festival circuit itself. But there's a different kind of type of festival, different kind of behavior that you target, because festivals oftentimes will pay screening fees or they will help the filmmaker travel, priority number 6, but they might not have the budget for both. This is what I mean by sometimes the priorities conflict with each other. Do you want to travel or do you want to make money off the film through screening fees? There's also networking, meeting potential collaborators and funders for a future project. Then you might want to target film festivals that have markets or are known for being very, very convivial, even though they don't have a market. They're known for being places where you can meet people easily, or they attract people that want to make the same types of films that you do. And then number 5, critical acclaim or recognition. That's, if you want to have a career, maybe more in the art world or really as like a tourist documentary filmmaker, you want those good reviews from cinephilic journals. Marielle, how did you guys think about this for 3 Promises?
Yeah, I mean, I think our primary goal was to just get as many eyes on the film as possible because Yusuf, our director's like motivation was just to like share his family story with as many folks as possible. So we knew we weren't gonna do that if we didn't get the film out there and like generate some buzz and conversation about it. So we took the festival route thinking that it would grow conversation about the film, and then once we were done our film festival um, circuit, it would be easier to release and get it out to folks. So
And I
yeah.
will say, you can tell that this is a priority in the 3 Promises festival path, because when you look at the festivals that you all played, it included a lot of Arab film festivals, for
Yes,
example. You really wanted to bring the film to the community, that it was fun.
absolutely. Yeah. It was a very like international focus, and we were open to community screenings as well.
but where do you go next? Film Freeway currently lists over 12,000 film festivals. Each has a different reputation, different attendance, political commitments, activities, whether they have markets or not. And in the last 5 years in particular, there's been a huge carousel at top film festivals. Festival directors leaving, programming teams completely changing, and then there's been this trickle down effect where then, other premier level festivals have this bring around the rosy a festival lead. So a lot of festivals are sort of changing what they're actually interested in selecting. But once you have your priorities, what seems overwhelming, like how do I tell what is legit and what's not out of those 12,000 film festivals? Plus, there are film festivals that are not on Film Freeway. Film Freeway is very North American heavy, and you might have places like Eventable, et cetera, for later. And I just want to say, we are trying to fix. We hear that there's muddy sound for those online. We are trying to fix it right now. Thank you to Colin for trying to work on that. Yeah, Grace's question: how can you tell which festivals are real or not? So it really is about using the tools that we have around us, and using your priorities, because what's real or what's useful for one filmmaker might not be real or useful for another filmmaker, just because, for example, Three Promises is playing certain film festivals doesn't mean that it's actually going to be a festival that is useful, or going to serve your priorities. So the way that we think about this is by identifying comps, short for comparisons. You then follow the examples of your comps. Well, there are other strategies too. You can ask your friends, you can ask, people that you know online. I'm sure we all know certain film festivals by reputation already, but it doesn't mean that we really understand what's going on the ground and whether or not that will be suitable or useful for our project. If you aren't already plugged in, don't have a lot of close filmmaker friends, this is where you can join filmmaker groups, which are very useful for this purpose. Even, there are many groups that have online forums or email lists that are kind of like the Nextdoor or Reddit of filmmaker groups, where you can really ask questions like, hey, does anyone know about X festival? What's been your experience? Or if something doesn't feel right, this festival is asking me to, spend $2,000 to be considered for a special competition. Are they real or legitimate? That's how you find out. Because someone like me or Marielle, even though we've been doing this for years, we also don't know every single festival. And just because I don't know about a festival does not mean it's not legitimate. It just means I don't know about it because I haven't worked on films that are around it, or it might be new, or a festival that was reputable might have gone down into the dumps and have serious financial problems and won't be able to uphold its commitments anymore. It's always best to try to get the most recent information available. Are the reviews on Film Freeway credible? I wouldn't trust that. I would really do your own research. There are no shortcuts here. There are no shortcuts. There's no, like, you ask me, is this good for my film? I can't give you that answer, but you can figure out that answer for yourself. And that really is through identifying comps. And then, okay, so what do we mean by identifying comps? I'm going to speed through these next few things because they have some kind of technical details on them. So you identify a comp by choosing a film or two films or multiple films that are similar in length, format, and genre. So you should not have a comp that is a fiction film for your documentary project. And career position of the filmmaker. So, for example, if you are a first-time making your first short film and you are switching career paths and you were not famous before and do not have, 1 million followers on social media, then you should not look at Taylor Swift's, short film directorial debut, which got into the shorts competition at TIFF at Toronto. That happened because she's Taylor Swift, you need to find a comp that ideally is similar to your project, but also not the same. You don't need to look for something that is like, say, I'm making a film about my dad. I don't need to find a film, a short film comp that is also about a statistics professor who immigrated to the US from China. That's too specific. And if I did find such a comp, actually, that would be terrible for me. I should probably not make that film in the next couple of years because it's way too similar to something that's already been out there. So it's okay if you don't find, if you have an environmental documentary about, waterways, you don't need to find something about waterways, but you probably still want to stick to an environmental documentary, right? You're looking for similar genre format. Marielle, you guys had some comps for Three Promises. How did you select those comps?
Yeah, great question. And this was actually one of my favorite parts of film festival strategy because you kind of get to like be a detective a little bit. But I think the first one we looked at was Foragers by Jemana Mana, which was like on the shorter side of like the runtime because our film is around 60 minutes, which can be hard to program. And she's a Palestinian filmmaker and made this kind of like artsy hybrid doc. And all of her past screenings were listed on her website. So we knew that those were festivals that might be of interest to us. And then we also looked at Feeling of Being Watched by Asia Bandawi, Midnight Traveler, sort of like subject matter related about a family facing relocation from their homeland. For Sama was kind of like more of an on the nose subject matter wise, but way different style, cinematic style. And then Five Broken Cameras is also a similar comp. So we kind of like chose a lot of comps and cast our net really wide when we were first looking at which festivals we wanted to go to. And I'd say the other thing that's really helpful too is like reach out to the filmmakers whose films you feel like are similar or a good comp for yours. And I find that filmmakers often give the best advice about which film festivals were worth applying to and going to. So definitely don't hesitate to do that as well.
Smart comps because most of them are first time filmmakers like Youssef. Jumana Mana's film is also 64 minutes. I think Three Promises is like 61. So it's an odd length too. So it's really smart to look at those. I'm going to go to my next slide because many of those things are on the next slide. Sometimes you can't figure out so basically the idea of getting a comp is that you look up the festivals that your comp went to, and that will give you a lot of information about what festivals are interested in this type of film. So you look up the film website or a page on the producer or director's website. So that's what Marielle was saying about Jumana Mana. She's an artist as well as a filmmaker. So like most artists, she's got a complete CV on her website. Every single screening that all of her films have ever played at since like 2013 are on her website. Forages is not her first feature, but you can also, it's very useful in that way, And also, it will usually have a list of funders supported by prior screenings, executive producers. You shouldn't just stick to looking at the festivals that they went to. Look up the names of the screenings, look up the festivals, the funders, the EPs, understand the universe of supporters of films like this. Marielle identified For Sama is the more on the nose, more conventional comp that they chose for Three Promises. In many ways, that was a broadcast, funded documentary. So it also had a very different path. It also made it all the way to the Oscars, but that has a very different type of path than, an independently produced film like Three Promises. So now, after you have created your list of festivals, we need to figure out why the film was selected. So when you're tracing strategies from a comp and you're thinking about why the film was selected, this is going to give you a lot of information about the landscape. You can search, then you look up the festival one by one. There's no shortcut to this. If you don't know about the festival, even if you do, look it up one by one. See if it was selected for subject matter. For example, there is something called the Essay Film Festival. Surprise, surprise, it only selects essayistic documentaries. So if you have a comp that is similar in subject matter that was selected for the essay film festival, but you do not have an essay documentary film yourself, it's probably not going to work as a festival for your particular project. Sometimes films get selected for local interest. For example, the New York Film Festival used to have a Made in New York section for short film. Is it a short film that played, other festivals, and then it, takes place in New York, and then it is played in the New York section of a film festival based in New York, but your film is not based in New York? And that's also, you're going to give you some information about why that film was selected. If the festival declared it as a world premiere or international premiere in a competition slot, that gives you some information about what types of projects they like to quote unquote discover or debut. For film festivals, you can look really close. You can get a lot of information from here. You can figure out who advocated for the film. Sometimes film festivals, especially ones that are very proud of world premiering or debuting film, they will have the initials or the name of the programmer who wrote the program notes. That gives you a lot of information. It's not one-to-one. I have, as a festival programmer, I have written notes for films I did not support. I was just, assigned to write the notes for it. But it gives you a lot of information about whose responsibility over that type of film it is. If you can't find a website for the film, try a social media account. Search YouTube and Vimeo for Q&As with the director. Google the name of the film plus film festival, and then you'll have festival websites come up. Try searching the name of the film plus EPK or press kit, because oftentimes maybe the director doesn't have a website, but there will be some materials online that tell you about the path that it took. Marielle, are there any other tricks you'd like to share?
I think these are awesome. At the press kit one especially, I think we found the press kit for feeling of being watched, and yeah, it was just so helpful. Yeah.
But she's a little less, has every single screening on her website than
Yeah.
Jumana Mana. But the feeling of being watched was a Tribeca premiere, and it had a publicist, and it was released on POV in the US, and there were multiple press kits for that film floating around that have a lot of screening information. So that's a really, really great reminder. Okay, you should also start early. From a programming standpoint, it's desirable to understand the filmmaker's context and practices. Take advantage of this to also better understand your own priorities and your filmmaking better. So this is really asking the question of, what matters to you? If you know at the beginning you want to get the film into as big of venues as possible, butts and seats, then how are you making your film so that that's achievable? If you really want to make a tourist film, you're really looking for that critical acclaim and recognition, then you should be thinking about positioning yourself as an auteur. What is so special and unique about your filmmaking? So even at these early stages, it's really about how are you making and presenting your film? I just want to say, so these slides also have, this shows you how difficult it is to get attention in the industry space at film festivals. So this is a photo that I took. It's a crowded room of computer monitors, and every single person who's in this room is on their phone while watching a film. And this is the press and industry screening room at Busan Film Festival in 2018, the A-list festival for fiction and documentary films in Korea, South Korea. And this was before Netflix had the, play a video at 2x speed function. But this player in the Busan Press and Industry Library had 2, 4, and 8x speed options for people to watch. People were watching films at 4x speed just to be able to get through it all. This is a photo of a commissioner for a public broadcaster in Europe. This is in the press and industry screening room at IDFA in Amsterdam. And you can see that she is watching 2 films at the same time, one on the computer and one on her laptop. And I'm not doing this, it's her back. I'm not saying this to shame her, but because we've all been there on the industry gatekeeping side. You just have to, the amount of things that you're given to watch, it's really hard. So this really just shows you why it's not only the screener that matters, it's kind of the story that we understand around you. Um, so it's not about also fitting your films to the taste of festivals and other institutions, because also this is how they're consuming your projects. Also, those, as I said before, there's been a lot of turnaround. There's been a lot of um, turnover at these institutions in the last few years. Um, so it's not about pegging to specific institutions. That's why when I say, look up the festival, also try to learn the people involved, because it's really about finding your tribe, the people who understand and support your vision for your priorities. Programmers track both filmmakers and projects. If one thing isn't suitable for one festival, it might be suitable for another place. Marielle, you had an experience with this because Three Promises went to Gotham Week in Gotham Lab. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, as soon as we like started to think about distribution, which was because of Gotham Documentary Lab, we started like mapping out every person that we met and just kind of like keeping a spreadsheet, because you never know when they might come back around. And for this workshop, I started kind of mapping out the folks that eventually invited us to film festivals, and a lot of them we were at least connected to a little bit through Gotham Week and Gotham Lab. So it's pretty remarkable how important opportunities like that are.
Yeah. Can you actually give an example, Marielle, like specifically about this? So, for example, I know that you met festival programmers at Gotham Week. How
Yeah.
did you keep them? What did you talk to them about, and how did you keep them updated?
Absolutely. Yeah, so at Gotham Week, we actually met Emily Burgess, who is the artistic director at BDR. And I believe we met someone from IDFA as well. And we kind of kept an entire document of notes, contact info from anyone we met, did research about them beforehand, and then kind of noted what we talked about. And then when there would be an exciting update, like we were invited to a work in progress showing at IDFA one year, like way before we were done with the film, we would send those updates to programmers or like folks that we had met just to like keep our project in their brain. And I think that really helped us out down the line. And actually, when we were in this workshop in 2023, VDR had just started releasing their invitations, and we hadn't heard. And I think, Abby, you were like, why don't you shoot just one last email to Emily? And then the next day after that, we received our invitation. And we have no idea like what happened behind the scenes there, but there's no question that keeping that rapport going, even though we were early on when we first met her, was really important.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So you can do this starting early. So Marielle mentioned the second bullet point here, markets and forums, training programs and labs. And I saw a question in chat I'm just going to pull up right now. Participating and getting grants from entities and participating in labs is not sufficient by itself to getting a festival premiere, because there's still dozens and dozens of films. And there's films who don't do any of those programs that get into top festivals as well. None of these things by themselves are sufficient for anything, but it's really about how, once you know your priorities, you leverage these opportunities that you have to meet the right people who will understand your project. Again, it's not about changing your project to fit them, because that is not a strategy that works out. Because also the little advice that you get along the way, I mean, they're not in the edit room with you. They don't really know what you do and don't have. Only you as the filmmaker do. If you live in a city with a film festival, go to that film festival, go to social events. If you live in a city with film screenings, go to film screenings. Stick around afterward, talk to people. If you are on social media, go to social media. Sorry, I'm pausing because I thought I took out film Twitter because Twitter no longer exists from this presentation, but I see it now back here. So it's supposed to say letterbox/social media. And those are places where you can, learn about people who like films that are similar to yours as well. But most importantly, you should really be thinking about telling the people who you already know and who have supported you in the past about your project. Have you made any films before, played at any film festivals? Keep in contact with those programmers. They want to know what you're doing next, even if they no longer work at that place anymore. You never know what they're doing next. Your funders, keep in touch with them. You never know what they're going to be doing next or who they just mention, to a friend. A previous guest speaker that we had doing this workshop, their film actually picked up a giant supporter who would in these days be an executive producer, Joshua Oppenheim, who made The Look of Killing and The Act of Silence, because a programmer at a festival that they submitted the film to loved the film and then wanted to send it to a colleague, Josh, but CC'd the wrong Josh and CC'd, their film accidentally to Joshua Oppenheimer, who watched it anyway, and then loved the film so much he gave them like pull quotes, to use and sent the film on their behalf to film festivals. So you just never know what's going to happen. That was an honest to God mistake that really, did a lot for them in their film. Yeah. Okay. So we will have time for a Q&A. We're going to go on. So let's say, you've identified your priority for your film and you're starting to send it to film festivals and you're getting some success or you're getting some maybes or you're starting your conversations with decision makers. This is the point at which you should know that it's okay to ask for anything that you might need, can negotiate everything. So let's say there was a question earlier about how to save money. Festivals are really expensive. Well, you can ask for fee waivers. You can ask for deadline extension. You can ask for competition or section placement, though that one's a little trickier. Once you get into a film festival, you can ask about slotting, scheduling. You can ask if your goal is to, make money off of your festival appearances, you can propose yourself as a panelist or as a speaker for festival events. Educational events, oftentimes that film festivals will have that will give you, not going to be a lot, but you can build up little by little to make it more worth your while. You can also leverage invites, which is another thing that we talked about with Marielle and with Three Promises. You can get into one festival and then use that invite to tell another festival that's higher on your priority list, to give them more information. Don't think about it as like, you're pitting them again. You're just giving them more information. The more information that you can give to people about what's going on with your film, the more you can frame that in a way that fits your priorities and the festival's priorities. I think the more people know to be able to make decisions on, everybody is trying to reduce risk in a way. You can negotiate screening fees, travel stipends, even if it's not offered, you can ask. You can also negotiate once you're at a film festival with sales agents, distributors, et cetera, et cetera. So this presentation will be shared. This is just a really brief link to a distribution advocate's cheat sheet for approaching distribution that explains some of those terms, so on and so forth. I am a part of distribution advocates in full disclosure. So what do we mean by it's okay to ask? So at the end of this presentation, there will be a QR code and we will also send out the link to this folder that has templates for emails and how you can ask for things that you might need. So these are two examples from myself as a producer. The first one is from a short film that I made with my colleague, friend, collaborator, Dan Garber, who's primarily an editor. And you can see that we are asking for a fee waiver, complete waiver. And I just include the information that's necessary. You don't need to have everything in this email, probably not going to have time to read it. But I do, this is just me personally, I do include the link to the entire screener because it just saves people time. It's more information, right? And then the second one is a film, a feature film that I produced. And you'll see actually this is an interesting email. We didn't have a sales agent. I had already played film festivals. I'm just summarizing in that first paragraph really briefly what happened. I linked to the press kit so that they can check out the other screenings if they want. And I'm asking, hey, this is an email to a distributor. Will you consider it for acquisition? And let me know if you don't want these emails from me anymore. Sorry. And in the first case, I would say that in my experience, about 50% of film festivals are able to give waivers or discounts when you ask. And in the second case, it did work out for us. They did view the film and we got a small licensing deal from them. So, you know, these are two examples, and we have more examples, templates of what you can negotiate for. Marielle, what did you guys ask for on your festival run?
Well, I was really grateful for this part last year and those templates because I think we initially were worried that like asking for a waiver, asking for an extension would hurt our chances. And also similarly, once we got in places, there was kind of this worry that like if you asked for a screening fee, asked for travel coverage, that like somehow they might take the invitation away. And so I just want to like affirm that it is absolutely okay to ask for what you want. And I'd say for us, at least on like the screening fee side, I'd say like 60 to 70% of film festivals will give you a screening fee, but you have to ask for it. Oftentimes, it won't be offered up front, and that for us was really instrumental in being able to attend film festivals because a screening fee from one festival might add to your travel bank for future festivals. And it's also just a really important part of shifting the power back to filmmakers because oftentimes you've spent years of your life working on these projects and that deserves to be compensated. So just definitely want to echo, ask for anything that you can, and the worst thing that can happen is they'll say no.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Marielle. And that actually ties into, so I'm going to pull up David's question from chat right now, which is, I've submitted my short to Tribeca, which I consider a long shot, and they require NYC premiere. I've just been selected for another New York City festival that precedes Tribeca, so it will disqualify my film from Tribeca. Is it bad to contact Tribeca about this? Does it reflect negatively on us if we are willing to withdraw from the festival that selected us and try to leverage a decision from Tribeca? So Marielle, that reflects your question of like, does actually asking or giving more information hurt my chances somewhere? What I will say, David, is that Tribeca, I actually believe that for short films, they require a world premiere, unless that's a recent change. As of last year, they're extremely strict about world premieres, more strict than any other festival I know. Even if you play a rough cut somewhere, they will withdraw invites if they find that out, so on and so forth. But at this stage, I would say what you can do is you can, you know, so what I'm sensing from this question, though it's not mentioned here, is that there's going to be a deadline to respond to the first festival. You can't hold them out forever. So what you can do is you can tell them when do you need my decision? Get a timeline from them, ask for an extension on that decision, and then go to Tribeca and to the shorts. There's two short programmers there, I believe, and go to them and say, my film was selected for this festival. Can you make a decision earlier? But do not withdraw from a festival before you have an invite from another, because Tribeca is a long shot and so on and so forth. But you can ask for people to make a decision quicker. And then if Tribeca says, we cannot make a decision quicker, you're just going to have to wait until April when we notify everyone. They are lying, and that means that they are not prioritizing your film. So I would go where you're wanted at that point, you know? Okay, so we're going to speed through these last couple of bits. Remember that programmers and curators are just people too. So first of all, not everything needs to be transactional in terms of your communications with people. For questions like, should I reach out to somebody to X? I mean, just consider, would you do this for a friend, an acquaintance? Like, do they just want to know what's going on with their project if you already know them? Probably, you know. When I left being a film festival programmer, I definitely felt I saw the volume of emails I got from filmmakers decrease. And I understood it was because I no longer was obviously useful for those filmmakers. But it did make me really sad because it felt really transactional. Anyway, so this is just saying it from the programmer's point of view. I often recommend to people to keep in touch with people, even if they no longer feel immediately useful for you. As an example, I did this workshop last year and found out that person had been really well supported by a programmer who from Locarno at the film festival, but Locarno had multiple giant changeovers of programmers, and the programmer that supported this film had been let go in one of those mass firings of programmers, and also worked for another festival, but had also been very publicly let go from this other festival. And their ideal festival to premiere at was MoMA's Doc Fortnight in New York, which is happening right now in New York. And I was just like, hey, you know what? You should have kept in touch with that guy because he's now the programmer for MoMA's Doc Fortnight, you know? But reach out to him again. It might not be too late, and we clearly loved your work before. But when I was like, why haven't you kept in touch with him? And she's like, oh, well, he doesn't work for a film festival anymore. It's like, everybody is in here forever. We're just people, And if you're working hard at finding your tribe and finding people who support your work, they can support your work in however, is possible. Marielle, I'm going to turn it over to you guys because I think you have a really good anecdote from IDFA about this and meeting the programmers from True False, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say like most of the success of our festival run had to do with relationships with programmers and like just really genuinely connecting as humans. And so I think we got into Visions to Real for our world premiere, and I think that's where Yusuf connected with Milton, who's a programmer at Camden International Film Festival. And so I obviously it's hard to know what goes on behind the scenes, but I think that connection and Milton being excited about our film got us our US premiere at Camden International Film Festival. And then there we met a programmer named Hala who works at True False. And then I also met the artistic director of True False when we were playing at IDFA in Amsterdam. So I think like the lesson there is just, yeah, programmers are some of the most lovely people to build relationships with. I think they get really excited to know the story behind the team as well as just about your film. And yeah, attending festivals in person to get to talk to the people there really can be the thing that connects you to your next festival as well.
Thanks, Marielle. So the last few slides have to deal with this question of festivals and sales, which I said earlier we were going to get to. So I would just caution everyone by saying, and as I hinted at in the beginning, screening at film festivals is not the only way for documentaries of any length, short, mid-length features, to be seen by gatekeepers and other decision makers like broadcast commissioners. In fact, for sales, it is a very poor strategy. So distribution advocates in 2022, we did a survey of every feature-length documentary world premiere at Sundance, South by Southwest, and Tribeca. We also surveyed hot docs, but we didn't know enough producers of hot docs film and got a very low response rate. So that data is not in this survey. And you can look up this survey on the distribution advocates Substack, this data. And so, these are responses from producers of films, not from their sales agents. We really wanted the producers. We wanted to get real information. So you can see the demographics of directors. I hear all the time, I'm a white filmmaker. Nobody's selecting my film anymore. That is false. You can still see that 70% of the directors of films selected into Sundance, South by, and Tribeca in 2022 were white or non-Hispanic white, or which is higher than the US population percentage by a lot, for example. It is a rat race for everyone. This is the Sundance example. That year, and it's more now, 1,730 films were submitted. 35 feature documentaries were accepted. Of them, 15 films were first timers at Sundance, meaning the majority had already had previous film play at Sundance. And of those 35 films, 7 films licensed rights sold at Sundance, actually until the 6 months after Sundance, because that's when we kept the survey open until, and only one, you can't even see it. Thank you for zooming in, Amanda, for in-person people. Only one first film by a first timer at Sundance actually sold. It got better the year following this, 2023, or it got worse in 2023. It got better last year, 2024. Now, as of today, 0 films have feature-length documentaries have sold out of Sundance. There are rumors about quite a few, but 0, and it's now a month after the festival. So of the films that sold, now this is again going back to Sundance, South by, and Tribeca. So you'll also notice that only one film sold worldwide rights outside of Sundance. When we did this survey, that year is a particularly bad year. But of the films that sold rights, yeah, all of them did have a sales agent, but look at how many films had sales agents and sold no rights at all, not even US only rights or parts of other worldwide rights. So with that in mind, we're actually going to talk briefly about trade-offs, about this question of going to a film festival with or without a sales agent. And what we mean by a trade-off is not a value judgment. It's not pluses or minuses. You'll see a slide that has an up arrow and a down arrow. And the up arrow means what you gain, and then the down arrow means what you lose. Now, what you gain might actually not be what you want to gain. What you lose is also something that you might want to lose, for example. So there's no value judgment attached to this. It just shows you a couple of different ways of working. Okay, so this is having a festival agent. So there are people who just do festival, submission and distribution, or a sales agent who will try to sell your film to a variety of different places. What you gain if you work with a festival or a sales agent is that you become part of the trusted network of the agent. It saves you from having doing all the work that we just talked about before. You'll, assuming that you hire someone reputable, get access to knowledge about business models in the current market. You creative agents can propose and offer unique personalized solutions. And outside of North America, sales agents join earlier than North American sales agents. They will put together financing. They may have output deals themselves. They act more like a distributor in the US. And also because the sales agent might actually already have an agreement with film festivals that they can submit a whole bunch of films at the same time, so on and so forth, saves on festival submission fees. But what you lose when you work with the festival and sales agent is that you lose contact with yourself, with the festival landscape, programmers, industry, and other longer term relationships. All those things that we talked about earlier, finding your tribe, understanding who it is, you lose that first point of contact. You lose screening fees because that is how the sales agent makes money. They take the screening fees. Whether or not you get festival prize fees depends on the sales agent. There was also the rise of predatory practices from sales agents. I do not recommend that you ever accept a flat fee payment structure for a sales agent. They should be making money when they make your film money. And also your filmmaker identity is lost. The same way that they get to save money on festival submission fees by submitting all of their films at once means that you are part of now a pile of submissions to a film festival. Marielle, what do you think? You guys did this all without a sales agent.
Yeah, I would say that wasn't for lack of trying. We really pursued getting a sales agent because all of us, this was like our first time at the helm of a festival run for a film. So we went after like Dogwolf, Cinetic, Outlook, light docs, and did not get any agreements with any of them. We got pretty far with Film Collaborative, which focuses specifically on film festivals. But I would say we came away for the better because of the rich network of relationships that we now have, and because we were interfacing with festivals directly, they were able to know so much more about our team and about our story. So yeah, I would almost recommend um, doing it. Try doing it yourself, or if you have a sales agent, be as involved as you possibly can in the process. What was the last thing I was gonna say? Um,
Yeah, I would
yeah,
add that, if you already have those relationships, then a sales agent can become a good partner, right? You don't have to develop them. The sales agent, if you already have a lot of relationship, will also lean on your relationships too. A very smart one will ask you, will gather that information so that they can tailor a better pitch as well.
yeah.
So I'm not saying, again, these aren't, positives or negatives, these aren't recommendations. It's more about what is going to work for you with your priorities at your stage in your career right now.
I remembered one last thing. I think the most challenging thing without a sales agent was to attend festivals that did have markets and to know how to participate in those markets. So I'd say if you are doing it yourself, doing a lot of preparation for how to show up and be involved in markets. But as Abby was saying, a lot of films are not selling at markets. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Okay, so there are some questions that I already saw in chat that will be answered by these next two slides, and then we'll do a break after that. So the notes on submission, you don't have to wait until the film is completely done unless the festival eligibility requirements say they won't take unfinished films. And then I would be very careful about this. You should always read the, eligibility requirements. But especially if you're going after a world premiere and you are making a creative documentary as kind of auteurist, you already know the festival, or you're trying to position yourself in this way, you can have a picture lock, but no finishing sound or color, and that's okay to send to a film festival. In fact, I would say that every single film that gets accepted by, for example, Sundance and South by is not finished. I have seen between the festival announcement period and the actual festival, I've watched rough cuts of Sundance accepted films when I was a festival programmer, and I have seen like entire structures change. I have seen like a film that was like chronological be turned into a 5-chapter non-chronological documentary and an entirely new character added, just in that 1 month alone. I would say that unless you're Sundance accepted or you're kind of on that track, that amount of change is not what I usually recommend. But you don't need to wait until the film is done. And if you have questions about what a festival will and won't accept, you can write to programmers outside of the submission process. Um, you know, in the summer, in the winter, whenever they're not working for that festival, just keep them updated. Ask them questions. If you're in their town, take them out to dinner. Some notes on short films, because there were questions about short film. First of all, if you have a short film, you should not use a feature as a comp because premiere and length requirements differ greatly between festivals. Some film festivals will require world premieres for features, but not for shorts. That's Sundance, for example. Sundance plays a lot of shorts that are not world premieres, more than half, I believe. But they are pretty strict about the world premiere requirements for features these days. So it's simply not going to be very useful to you in creating your festival strategy because there will be different rules for different lengths of films. And some festivals have programmers, actually, I would say many festivals have programs and activities dedicated just to shorts. For example, in the Tribeca example, it's a different set of programmers who are programming features versus shorts. So if you have a short, using a feature as a comp isn't necessarily going to be very useful for you to learn the landscape of who's actually making the decision behind your film. In terms of lengths, there's always, the in the US, filmmakers get told often, don't make something over 15 minutes, it'll never get programmed into a film festival. In Europe, if you have a film less than 15 minutes, it will never get programmed into a film festival. I'll tell you that. Every Oscar nominated short right now is like between 25 and 30 minutes long. You should make the film that is the right length that it should be, and then you find a comp that is that length. And the places that that film went to are going to be the places that clearly have experience programming the length and the type of film that you're making. Again, you're finding the people who want to support the work that you're making. You're not changing your work to fit into what you imagine to be the requirements of a festival, because that might change. All right. Finally, if you got into a film festival, take note of who's entering your film, write down all of the names, all of that. Do like Marielle, and you guys had a spreadsheet where you kept track, not just this project, the next one. Now you can just remind yourself, you know, who it is. It doesn't need to be a spreadsheet. I just used the old-fashioned notebook, and I just made sure that, you know, if somebody came up to us during a film festival, this is me as a producer, and said, you know, I loved your film. I fought so hard for it in the screening committee. Write down this person's name and add them to your mailing list. You know what I mean? This is somebody who's gone out of their way to support your filmmaking vision. Update everybody else, press list, press kits, contact info, they're necessary, but again, not sufficient. They're very helpful tools for you. Okay. And here's the slide with the QR code for the Festival Strategy Resources folder, which has the information that I talked about earlier. It also has, I didn't mention this, it also has the template for keeping track of your festival submissions and taking notes, a blank template, which you can use. That is my own personal template that I use. Oh, it doesn't work. I'm so sorry. The QR code no longer works. But we will email. I'll put it into chat during our break, and then we'll also email the link to everybody. If you registered, if you got the information to come here, you're registered, and we'll send it out to everyone. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing so you don't try to use the QR code anymore. Apologies for that. And just briefly glancing through chat, we have a Tribeca programmer in the house, apparently. So I think, Andrea, you can answer people's questions if you feel like it. We're a little bit over on time, so I'm going to have us take a break now, and then we'll answer questions at the end, since we've been answering questions all along as well. Anissa?
Thank you, Abby, and thank you, everyone. We will be taking a break now. We will take a 5-minute break, and we should be back by 11:15, roughly, maybe a few minutes earlier, um, uh, Pacific time. So take a break, come back. You don't need to leave the Zoom. You can stay. But thank you for joining us, and we will start the workshop afterwards. Thank you, everyone.
Anissa, can you stay on the line?
Yes, I am.